It's Jazz and Beyond on 702 and Cape Talk with me, Nothemba. And this is the part of the show that I totally enjoy because, as you know, on a weekly basis, we get deep and under with some of the most interesting guests that we feature on Jazz and Beyond, where you come for the jazz and then you stay for a good time. And today, my guest is a multidisciplinary South African artist whose career spans music, drama, film, traditional healing, and she's also just widely described as an arts and culture activist. And all these things intersect somehow or the other. But she'll tell us all about it. You might have heard of her, but if you haven't, you're going to be very happy you have, because she's released an amazing album called Azania. And I'm talking about Sibongile Nene, who's, should I refer to you as Gogo Sibongile Nene?
Thokoza Makosi or Makosi,
Makosi,
Gogo.
Gogo,
Makosi is good, but most people now have gotten used to Gogo.
to Gogo.
Nene,
So
yeah.
Gogo Nene.
Yeah.
And that's good to know, so that I refer to you in ways that you prefer and feel comfortable about as well. Welcome to Jazz and Beyond.
Thank you. I am honored to be here. I mean, honored beyond description to be here.
Really?
And I'm curious to know what I can contribute to an amazing place like this.
You will be surprised how much value you, I believe anyway, that you're going to add not only in your philosophy, your thoughts, your art and your skills, and also just musically what you've now added to the South African port of South African jazz.
Wow.
Okay, let's start with the fact that you're all these things: a musician, theater practitioner, filmmaker, cultural activist, traditional healer. But when you introduce yourself to people who don't know you for the first time, who is Sibongile Nene or Gogo Nene?
Sibongile Nene, when I introduce myself to, regular folk, I introduce myself as a sangoma because a little while back, 20-something years ago, according to tradition, I lost my identity as my birth name, or as I've known myself since birth, and took the calling of an ancestor who I'm an incarnation of, according to our traditional practices and beliefs. And when you become a sangoma and you go through the rites of passage to become a sangoma, you enter a new world that has its own character, and that is the character of the ancestor whose work you're taking on. And you die as the person that you were born knowing yourself to be. And so you cease to even be called by your first name. You are then called by your clan name, because it is understood that the ancestor whose work you're taking on is a family ancestor. So you then embody the lineage and take on the gifts and the heritage of the lineage, including the talents and the gifts of the lineage. And the lineage goes from a family unit that you're born into all the way to the royalty of that lineage, or even beyond, to the deities that lineage revere or answer to. And so you are then called by your clan name, hence either Makosi Nene or Gogo Nene. And most people of Isintu culture do have a sort of an inkling of that. They most do that know that you have a different name, or that you are referred to in a different way.
Mm.
And so when I introduce myself, I don't hug. I don't.
You hugged me.
I did, yeah. But by tradition,
Mm.
some of those etiquettes that we're used to, some of the sort of social things that we do,
Mm.
once you are embodying the clan or the spiritual team that comes with you, the ancestral team that comes with you, you become aware of them first. And so, hence, we clap
Mm.
instead
Yeah.
of shaking hands or
Mm-hmm.
hugging. And then we say Togoza Makosi, which is um, those that are walking with me, be happy, or be accepting of who is in front of me. So you
Mm-hmm.
kind of are warning them in advance
Mm-hmm.
that you are interacting with someone in your presence. And yeah, so thank you for asking, because there is a difference
Mm.
to introduction from a perspective of someone who is an indigenous spiritual practitioner like a Sangoma.
Mm. But even then, being initiated or
Mhm.
into that position, that only came later.
Mm-hmm.
You had been doing other things.
Absolutely.
What was Gokonene doing
Well,
doing before all this?
I was born in KwaZulu Natal, in a small village outside a town called Melmoth.
Mm.
And my grandmother, who I was left with soon after I was born, was of the lineage of Shaga's mother. She was of the Elangeni people. She was Mamhlongo, and came from the same household as Nandi and Gukeni, and they are descendants of Egyptians. People of Elangeni come from the Nefertiti lineage.
Mm.
And on my father's side, I was born of Caucasians from my grandfather. Yeah, my father's father. Yes.
Mm.
His father was a Scottish. William was his clan. He comes from the lineage of King William from Scotland. They come from Fort William in the farthest west of Scotland, and they ended up in Eshowe, where my grandfather was born, and my father was born. And my father and his father took the name of the grandmother, the African side, because there was no marriage with the Williamson. And so that clan name, my grandmother's name was actually, it was my great grandmother's name, was my father's grandmother
Mm.
was Entuli. And then on my father's mother's side, she was also born of a Norwegian who came as a missionary in Ashowe and married Mkize, who was a Zulu man with a polygamous, um, marriage. He had several wives, and she was the only, I guess, Caucasian in the family. And she gave birth to my grandmother, my paternal grandmother. And so, that mix came into the Zulu line, which is my mother's line, and I'm that mix.
Mm.
Although I am not a colored by culture or heritage, in that I have no real connection other than the ancestral mixed race
Mm.
part of me. And so, yeah, I grew up in KZN. My father was born in KZN. My mother was born in KZN. and it was very much a part of my roots to be a Zulu and to be to be a proud Zulu girl up
Mm.
until I was about 13 years old when my parents, who my mother met a white South African man who later became my stepfather, and in the 70s they were both living in Johannesburg. My stepfather was lecturer at Wits, English and Drama, and my mother had been a nurse ever since my birth, hence me being left with
Your
Ugogo.
grandmother.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
She was at Baragwanath Hospital, and she became a nurse from about 19, 20 years old. And they met in Soweto. He did theater, and she was working, but she was also an artist in that she did dramas and sketches. You remember those picture books that would
Yes.
have stories instead of
Yes.
television?
Yeah, yeah, yes.
She was an
Yeah.
artist in those.
Like the comic books kind of
Yeah,
thing.
she did
Mm.
dramas
Mm.
in those books, and she also, did ballroom dancing. And I think she would have wanted to be a performing artist
I'm
in that she
sure.
would want to sing as
Mm.
well. She became Miss South Africa, Miss Soweto rather, in 1971, and they both had quite a life, but then they needed to stop hiding and going to Swaziland to express their love to each other, which they would have to do in that
In
during
that
those days.
era,
And
yes.
so
I lived in Swaziland, so I saw a lot of that. Mm. Mm.
where they were holidaying, and,
Mm.
and and all of a sudden they could be intimate and free, and
Mm.
and express their love for each other openly, publicly, which they couldn't do in South Africa.
Yeah.
So they both strategized to travel to England. My mother got a placing at St. Thomas Hospital in London, which is a heart transplant hospital, and my stepfather got uh, decided to do his PhD at Leeds University, so he got into that program, and they both left in 1973. And I was in Durban, just outside Inanda,
Mm.
that at that time, and they left me with Gogo, and then I went to Inanda Seminary,
Yes, a very famous school
which
there.
is which was just the beginning of this incredible different life where I met people, young people who were South Africans, who were Xhosa from East London,
Mm.
well, those days they were called Ciskei and Transkei, and then names like Nonjebo, which
Mm.
were just a
Mm.
new introduction into who South Africans really were
Yeah.
for the first time, and there were children from all kinds of the elite, I guess, of South Africa, who ended up in that school, and they were all girls. And then, of course, we were taught for the first time in my life, by Caucasians and Indians and
Yeah.
Africans as well. I remember the principal of the school was a missionary lady. I remember to this day Miss Gunn, who spoke with such a thick American accent. And so, you know, that sort of took me to South Africa for the first time, when I
uh,
had, prior to that, been very
a
much.
a broader sense of what the rest of the country
Yes, yes,
represents. Yeah.
yes, yes. And,
Mm.
and
Is
it,
that when you after that joined your parents?
yeah, in
Mm.
1978,
Mm.
that's when I left the country. I was 13 at the time, and then began that whole life, which you could call it life in exile, but actually, for my parents, it wasn't like anybody was following them with guns and so on. It was because they needed to get married officially, and they needed to live outside the country in order to do that. But we then ended up in that space of
Mm.
of uh, meeting families and meeting communities who came from South Africa under the exile sort of umbrella.
Mm.
And that was a very interesting transition for me because I got to understand South Africa in a different way than before, a more political way.
Mm-hmm.
And in that understanding the political way, I also understood how other South Africans,
Experienced,
yeah,
the
experience life
country.
and what they, because it was strange being outside in even in under exile. We were still really capturing the life at home and trying to rebuild it or remake it where we
Mm.
were.
Mm.
And in our communion, in family dinners and sort of that sort of thing, I got to learn for the first time then at 14 what the politics were all about, because my family would have other family from, family friends, and in that time shared, they would my stepfather would open a pack of cigars, and another friend would be, rolling a joint, and they would be opening a bottle of wine, and somebody would be putting an LP on the thing, and they would be right into their politics,
Mm.
and a lot of the time arguing about, are they communists? Are they ANC? Are they, Black consciousness? Are they, Pan Africa? And these were concepts that at the time
Mm.
I had not gone to school and had not experienced those terms and what they meant. And in their arguing,
Mm.
I know my stepfather was very much into Cuba and was very much into communism, and his friends were not necessarily, in aligning with that. There were ANC, and some of them were, against the whole Cuban thing, or some of them thought that socialism was, a thing of the past, or communism, or all of this, and so it kind of brought me to understand the sort of salad of politics
Mm.
that actually existed
Is
for South Africa.
when then, because understanding that both your parents were into the arts,
Yes.
the theater and acting and all that, is that the bug? Did the bug, sort of hit you then? Just experiencing them and watching them, or how did it start for you?
I've never had the bug for.
Oh, I get
I get a sunburn. It's a wrap.
it's a wrap. Mm.
I've never had the bug. My stepfather was one of those human beings. I mean, he was white South African, but he believed himself more or less a Zulu, I think, or
Ne?
a black man. And theater was so much his passion, and literature, English literature, that at 13 and a half or 14, I was just a year in outside of Leeds, which is a tiny village called Otley.
Mm.
That's where my parents had bought a house, and it was so tiny that the English, you cannot even, it's not English that they're speaking anymore. But he put me into a drama school in Leeds, and so every Sunday I had to go to drama classes and do a thing, and every now and again the drama class would have, a sketch or a play that
Mm.
they would put on, and I would do this thing because he thought it was important, and I wanted to know how to act and do drama. I had no concept of putting on an act.
Mm.
The only thing I had come from really was that in my village, or in Nanda at home, after we'd finish our dinner, we'd get together with my friends, and we would be doing competition with the valley across the kids across the valley,
Mm.
where we would be singing our song, right, and singing out loud so they could hear it, and maybe three or four of us, neighbor friends,
Yeah.
singing it and finishing it, and then waiting for
Their
across
response.
them to sing their part.
Mm.
And this is what we did at nights, and that's what I was used to, but the idea of contextualizing
Mm.
performance in a sort of structured way, like you're presenting a play. There are
Mm.
words, you have to learn the words, and you have to act the words. I
Mm.
never saw the point to it in a way. Whereas with singing and the competition and that there was a push to be good at that
Yeah.
somehow.
Mm.
But in a sense, I think I'd have to say thank you to him because as any good parent does, they try to give you the tools that you may or you may or may not need.
Yes.
Um, but they have the wisdom and the experience of life enough to know what might be needed one day.
Sure.
And I feel also that he was ancestrally a gift to me, even though he was my mother's lover at first. When I was about 8 years old, is when I met him.
Mm.
I feel that he was a gift for me, specifically my stepfather. And his name is Robert McLaren, by the way. He's quite well known, and he writes under the name Robert Kavanagh. And so, as a child, I remember the first meeting with him. I think he insisted that he comes to Enanda to meet me because I was 8 at the time and I was living with my grandmother. And they did come, my mother and him, and he drove down in this amazing Mazda. He was loud and theatrical. There's a yellow Mazda that he had, and he wore yellow bell bottoms, and his hair was down to Jesus length. And we called him a duck tailor. And he was the first person that actually he played the guitar, and he was just one of those types. So he would play this guitar, and I remember him teaching me my first song, and he of course thought he was Zulu. So the first song he taught me was
A Zulu song.
Sizo bulinkanye zumai puma sizo bulinkanye. So I would sing along and huff and puff along to him because I wasn't a singer outside of just my competitions. And we would sing these songs that he would teach me, and he would also sing me Scottish songs because he was of Scottish descent. His father came here when he was 2 years old from Scotland. And I would say that he exampled a freedom of artistry in song and guitar playing and so on. I remember later I started to pick at his guitar and try to learn. And that first trip when he was 8, when they were traveling back to Joburg, he insisted that my mother takes me with them so that I would stay in Johannesburg with them for a bit. And I think he just didn't quite understand, how sometimes partners can be. He didn't quite understand that my mother worked in the most grueling Soweto hospital, which was Baragwanath Hospital in the 70s.
Yeah.
And that she was extremely busy. But anyway, he insisted, and I went up with him. And en route, I was in the back of the Mazda. The two of them were in front. And they sang songs one after the other the entire journey coming up to Johannesburg. And I saw something there. I saw this first of all, love. That love is like that a man and a woman. Do you remember this song? And what about Twang 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 and whatever, and Sutu was another new thing. But the love between them, the love language,
the connection
and the love language using music. I just thought, that is how I would want my love life with my chosen partner in life to be. They had this beautiful agreement in melody and agreement in backing each other. If one starts, that song, the other one has made a point of actually learning the song, even if they would not have known it, and they supported each other like that. So we had many Sundays where Dad would just get on the piano and to be strumming away, and Mom would be I would be with mom in the kitchen, and mom would open a beer, and
Mm.
she would be singing along to dad, who is in the hallway or in the living
Yeah.
room while in the kitchen, and making sure he knows that she's supporting him.
But you started theater
I did.
and music,
Yeah, I did.
and where was this, by the way?
This was in London, and
Mm.
it was in. I went to London in 1990.
Mm.
I was living in Zimbabwe at the time because my family had moved to Zim
Mm.
to be able to be closer to home. And in Zimbabwe, I had started making films or being part of films, or, doing voiceover for films
Mm.
and stuff. And I remember it was a Japanese friend of mine who was a DOP on one of the films that I was apprenticing on, who said to me, what do you want to be? And I honestly had never had a concrete. I was 22, 23, and didn't have a concrete idea of what I wanted to
Mm.
do. But
Or even asked yourself.
I'd never asked myself.
Mm.
I had guilt about not knowing, like, what direction are you going, girl? Like, are
Mm.
you going to go to university? What are you going to study?
Yeah.
And why are you going to study that? Because I had parents who both, my mother was a blue collar worker, and my stepfather was an academic. And,
Mm.
so the idea of me not having a direction or a career or even an idea of study was strange. But I've always felt that I never aligned or resonated with academics. I couldn't find in the prospectus of any university
Mm.
anything that spoke to me. And something inside me
Yeah.
would always tell me that I'm a child of fate, and that something else is kind of taking me wherever, and I don't know where that is, but somehow whenever I follow it, it would always land me somewhere that is good and safe, and I'm
Mm.
fine.
Mm.
And so that's what I said to this Japanese friend of mine. I said, I'm a child of fate. I don't know. I think I'm an aspiring actress. And I only said that because I'd had that background of drama and so on. And he said to me, why be aspiring? Why not just be an actress?
True.
Why not just be an actress? And
Mm.
so I started at that time to apply to schools, and
Okay.
in applying to schools, auditioned to the 5 schools. And just before I was invited, I went to England to the 5 schools who wanted me to audition. I was cast in a film, which was the first sort of all Zimbabwe cast Zimbabwe story film called JIT. And in that, being cast in that film, I realized that there is something for me in film or in acting, because I had the lead role in that.
But in the arts, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I did a terrible job of that lead role. But one of the things I and that came to that film was one of the characters was an old woman called Jukwa. And this Jukwa is literally a Sangoma, an ancestor who is behind the boy who's the love interest. The boy wanted to marry me, was in love with me. My character's name was Sophie. So he was obsessed with Sophie, wanted to marry Sophie. But there was this Sangoma ancestor who was a Jukwa who would appear out of nowhere as a snake, to scare this boy and tell him, you must go home and you must go and pay lobola. And you must take this young woman through the proper protocol
Mhm.
and make her, whatever it is. And I became aware of that presence in
Ah.
projects that I was involved with. I
Mm.
later had the similar experience where I was in a play with an actor here. She's called Nambita Mbumlwana.
Yeah.
We
No,
were
I
we
know
were
her very
part
well.
of a cast, a theatrical piece which was written by a South African in Toronto at Young People's Theatre, and I was given the part of a sangoma, and she was called Dunomvula, right? And it was I literally had to take Nambita to a separate room for a study on what do they do. I just know they say Ichu Makos. That's all
Yes.
I knew at the time. And but that presence kept knocking in different ways in different projects that I did. And I did in 1989 go to theater school, to drama school in at Ealing Broadway. And it happened to be a great move by the ancestors, because the program, there were 5 schools accepted me, and they were all 3-year long programs, and I chose the 1-year long program because I felt I was 23 and I would be with 17-year-olds going through a 3-year program. I was too old at 23.
Like, yeah.
And so I took the 1-year program, and it was a pummeling, it was a training, it was where I met with our instructors were all artists, and they were artists who had sought to find alternative ways than, rigid Eurocentric ways. For instance, our movement instructor, Sue, she was a ballerina by training, but she was teaching movement, which is very different from, and she had incorporated in her teaching Tai Chi and yoga and other Eastern modalities, and was teaching us movement with all of those other therapies or modalities, and alternative to a sort of a rigid English structure, if you will. And most of the teachers, the voice teacher was like that, the singing, the singing teacher was a white South African woman who was an opera singer, and the training was wanting to be much more sort of training us to sing more operatic style, and I knew that there was sort of no way in hell that I was ever going to be an opera singer, but we all had that attitude, and we all did it anyway. But that was a time and place where my physical conditioning started to open up, my cellular memory started to open up, my energetic channels started to increase my ability to connect to the cosmos, and this would be meditation sometimes, or certain visualizations exercises that might be part of the training for movement or whatever. For example, I remember one time the movement teacher had us go through this meditation to find the inner animal, so that you move like your animal. And it is a 2-hour long meditation. All of us in that particular movement class are on the floor, and we're visualizing, and she's leading us through the visualization. And in the visualization, I see a lion at the end. So the thing sort of takes you to an animal that you see in that journey that you're taking. So I see a lion at the end of it. There is the lion, and we come back, softly back to reality. And she asks all of us, so what animal did you see? And I decide that
I wonder.
I decide that I'm sick and tired of being sort of viewed as this exotic jungle girl who lives with lions and climbs trees with monkeys. I'm not going to tell her that I saw
A lion.
I'm not going to tell her that I saw a lion. I said I saw a chicken. Snake and lion, no. And I didn't know that she would then have like a practical class where we would take over the entire building, and each person would create in the building their like pen or their cage or their, where other people in the school would be coming to visit your cubicle, where you are being your snake or you're being your lion or whatever. And there I am
As a chicken.
on the day I've never been so humiliated and embarrassed and angry at myself more than on that day. And she walked by my cubicle and she was just pissed off because she knew that that's
What?
not the animal she
Yeah.
saw, and that's not who
In
I represent.
incidentally, that very lion that you saw,
Hmm.
um, I would imagine has had a lot to do with how your spiritual journey also transpired.
You got it. You got it. But that awareness didn't happen until
And
decades later.
decades later. So
Decades later.
I don't want us to run out of time, but I need to just very quickly how that spiritual journey
Mm,
um, started, or at least your being aware of it,
mm,
and how it then even leads to your musical expression
mm.
as well.
Yeah. Well, I would say that the journey started one afternoon where I had a visitation from very old people. I was in my apartment. I'd just come back from, I had a shop where I had textiles and I was sort of trying a business beside the acting.
Mm.
Excuse me, Togoza Makosi. And I came home and felt like my space just needed something. There was a funny smell. And I started speaking Zulu to myself, which by that time, my Zulu was kind of compromised a bit. I
Is
was
a
just
little
not,
shady.
yeah, a little
Af-
shade, you know what I mean?
After living
After living in
England and
England,
then Canada
yeah, you're right, yeah, and living with a Scottish descent father, and
Mm,
so and my husband at the time was Canadian as well, so
mm.
everything was shifting away from anything to do with my roots really. But I started to sharpen my tongue as I was walking through my space, and I was talking to myself in Zulu, and if the word didn't quite sound like how it should be, I started to kind of say it again and force myself to say it with the inflections of a Zulu person.
Mm.
And from then, I started to cleanse the place. I was burning sage and bells and what have you. And then something said, just sit down. And I had been doing yoga for 3 years, just consistently, and going through Kundalini risings and things like this. Um, and I think 2 or 3 weeks prior, I had done yoga. Every morning, I would do the sun salutation, and the sun salutation kind of goes, you go down and then you come back up like this,
Mm.
and you rise. And when I rose, I sort of in my brain or my head started having a series of, like, how when you fast forward a movie,
Yeah,
a
yeah.
series of these visions came by, and that's all I remember. And just towards the end, when I almost was going to black out, I saw this whoosh of a tiger stripes kind of, like in my here, and then I blacked out. And usually I would have those blackouts after doing, all this yoga for that many years and intensity. Even
Mm.
my husband at the time would say to me, you need to make sure you're in a safe space now because you're starting to have these blackouts. So I had these visions and I had these stripes, and then I blacked out. As I was coming to, I was literally like this. My hands were claws, and I was, I was making, I was the tiger that,
The tiger, you had become the tiger, so to speak.
And then 2 or 3 weeks later, I have this thing of like, I got to clean up, like a visitor's coming, and I've got to sharpen my tongue. And then I sat down. I usually use the floor in my living room. I sat down on the floor and I started to have this telepathic conversation with this vision, which was a vision of just almost like, a portrait of an entire clan of ancient people, very sepia colored people that are wearing old leather,
Mm-hmm.
idwaba like,
Mm.
um, ancient, very old, and very black, very kind of. Their skins are leather, like they're weathered,
Mm.
and I'm only seeing them in the peripheral, and they talk to me, and I was like a crazy woman talking to these people for 2 hours. And really what I was doing was I would repeat whatever it was I thought I was telepathically receiving from them. And I would go, "Oh, really? You would like me to go out into the world and heal the people, like with a medicine bag?" And I was sort of mocking, and they would sort of very steadily respond, "That is the service that we're asking you to do." And I would sort of have a reaction, and then I would pretend that I'm an actor, I'm one of the top 5 black actors in this country, and think of it.
I mean,
Think of
please.
me carrying a medicine bag, traveling the world poor, because healers are poor. Let's face it. I don't know a healer that is, stable, or even not even abundantly rich, wealthy. That is, how am I going to navigate my world with your world if that's what you want me to be? And it just kept coming that that's what I needed to do.
Yeah.
So to cut it short, I ended up having to travel home in '98 to KwaZulu, and one of my cousins that I always would leave my grandmother's place where I would be centered when I come home to her place where she married, to visit her, because I always just needed to spend time with her. I spent time with her and needed to buy her groceries. She lives in the village. And we went to Mbangeni to pick up groceries. I packed the van full, and, we traveled by van home, dropped our stuff. And then when I got home, I realized my entire purse that has my passport, my ticket, I was going back home actually in, I don't know, in a very short time. I had a short time left, and I lost it all. And I decided that there's nothing I can do. If I have to lose my ticket, I'm going to stay and just wait for that driver to be found and my things to, because I couldn't move. And in those 3 days that I waited for the bag, my cousin says to me, how is it that you've just changed so much? Like, are you aware that you've just become a whole other person? You're burning this and that. You are separating from your husband, and all of these things are happening. I think you should go and see so and so. And she mentioned a village, Sangoma, who is, most families. She's like the community respected
Sangoma.
elder Sangoma. Yeah. So I helped on. As soon as we had that conversation, somebody came from another part of the village to say that the driver had come home that day and then went to the city, and they're back now and they found the bag.
Oh, okay.
And I ended up at the yard of the elder Sangoma, Umamtembu, with my 6-year-old, daughter, thinking I'm gonna, at least see who this is and how this is gonna go.
Yeah.
And of course, inside her hut, she was shocked to see this. Who are these white people at my gate? And what do they want? I could see the way she looked at me when she came out of one of the huts and we were at the gate. And that was Mam Tembo. And we went into the hut, and I literally could not even sit down. The anticipation was so high. And she started with, "You, wati, wapo lingwe. You expressed or exploded or exhaled a tiger." Now I was alone in that experience. Nobody else was there, and even I don't know if I even told my husband that I had gone, that I was.
You had that experience.
Yes.
Yeah.
So she talked about that, and then she said, along with that, the most critical, urgent part is the lion. The lion is the thing that you need to balance within yourself. And it wasn't until later that I understood that my nightmares, which had been for years, I would be in those very low huts. I would be inside the hut, and I would look through the crack of this very short wooden door,
Mm.
old door, and outside I can see the lion is there just like this, waiting for me. I can see through the eyes that it's looking to see when I'm gonna step out of that
Step
hut.
out. Okay.
And I would be looking and looking, and as soon as he just looks aside, I burst out of that door and start running, and it would start chasing me. And I would
Wow.
I would and it would be the rolling hills there. It would be running. I'd be running in the valley. It would be running after me like this. And I'm where there are people.
Mm.
And once I'm close to those people, I knew that he would always retreat. This lion is the lion.
So those nightmares
Mm.
and those dreams were the signal that
Yes,
you
that
need
I
you need
had
to
this
go
power. Yes.
through. Look, I know we could talk for 3
Ever.
hours
Mm.
for 3 hours,
Yes.
just that portion of your
Mm.
life, but I need us to get into the musical part.
The
And
albums.
you've recorded other albums before,
Yes.
but this particular one, Azania, is one obviously that captured me.
Mm.
Not only because of the music and the fact that it's just appropriate for this show, but also the messaging, and not to mention the musicians, the musicality of it. And I also was getting a sense of you sort of bringing some awareness to us on some things we might just be overlooking or not considering, or maybe just taking lightly about the things that are happening around us in the world. Some of it political, because you have a song on Pico, you have a track called Affirmation, there's one called Melanin, and then there's one, I think you pay tribute to Ukredo Mutwa, Vusama Zulu, there's Soweto in there. So, I mean, all these, I'm sure, have so much meaning and significance to you and your life.
Yeah.
That's why I'm saying we're going to need 3 hours, because, and I love your storytelling ability. But it's just that I wish we had more time.
Yeah.
We had more time.
So I won't tell a story. I won't tell any more stories. I'll just get to the point. Really, what I realized, especially after my long spiritual journey, which lasted since '98 to now, I'm still going through the transformations. I came to realize that many of the people that made it possible for me to sort of even be naming myself and having the identity of being a South African, some of them have left this world, and some of them went through some brutal experiences in order to actually be part of the energy that made the change, the sacrifices that they would have made. And I can't say that it was sort of thematic and planned and strategic in any way. I saw it after it happened. But as many, things come to me, it came as a wave of energy. As a wave of energy that had a lot of tears, had a lot of heaviness in the heart. And I had to inquire as to, what it is that I needed to do to purge this burden that I was feeling. And I started writing one song, and it's in another album, and it's called Nothemba, it's called. And after writing that song, I realized that actually I was being charged with work to write songs. And so that song led to another song, led to another song. And when I then compared all of these songs that I'd wrote in the space of, a month or back to back, that these songs were my soul needed to say I could incarnate in this physical world that is South Africa and fulfill the purpose of whatever I was charged to fulfill because of certain people. One was my grandmother. To even have a South Africa, to even have a place to come back to after almost 40 years of being outside the country, was because of these sacrifices. The Madala is one of the songs that makes me want to cry, even just describing it. Of this, the men that I saw growing up who were elders, who needed respect, who I thought, as culture said, they needed respect, were being treated with humiliation, wearing shorts and ridiculed, who were trimming hedges, but you could tell they're slumped, they're bowed, and I felt like the crying that I would have as a child, not having any tools to really do anything about it, where I felt sort of incensed that this man is being treated like this, when in fact, when he's in his own space, he is his own king. He's with his children. He's with his... That some of those men, and my grandmother's in that same mix of people, where... so I felt, my soul was speaking directly to those old men and saying, you bowed, but you didn't break. And you taught us how to laugh so that we could carry the struggle. And every time you were planting in the garden and you planting your seeds, you would always whisper a prayer. Freedom will come. Freedom will come. Maybe one day we'll meet you there. And it just felt such a relief to be able to say that to the Madalas of our, of our history, of our legacy in the whole apartheid era and after. And yes, you are not here to experience it, Madala, but you are in the spirit here to see that what you planted in your prayers for us.
Has brought some
Yeah.
fruit.
The same with Bigo. And both of these songs, actually most of the songs in Azania, I wrote them and then had music in my ears, and then just from the first note to the end, I didn't know what melody was coming out. I just sang it, the script.
And who was now helping you with the arrangements?
Nothing is arranged. None of them are arranged.
As in the musical.
The mixing, the mixing person is my absolute favorite person because he's such a good mixer. His name is Drum People. His name is Philip.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Actually, Drum People. He mixes my music because he completely understands that it comes from an organic place.
Yes.
And it
needs
comes
to sound.
and it is mostly storytelling. So he needs to allow the music to kind of just back off a little bit and to have the story be told.
He did an amazing
and
job.
I'm in awe. Actually, Bigo is his favorite song, and mine is Madala.
In fact, I played Ubambo Lwam last week, so
I was so scared. Actually, that's the one song that he arranged. That was arranged.
Oh,
because I almost threw it out.
Really?
I almost threw it out because I was embarrassed that I cannot sing. And
are you crazy?
I am not. I almost threw it out. I said to him, he kept saying, what about this one? Shall we start mixing it? And I said, no, I think I'm going to just let that one go because it's just not.
You will be surprised.
And when he mixed it and brought it back to me, I'm just like, you got the energy of it. Because, and that song, especially there's a line saying, Ututuami. My parents called each other Ututu or do, doo-doo.
Yeah.
And actually, those in the 70s and 80s, do was like the Utegedisa term between lovers, especially lovers of the that generation. It
Mm.
wasn't so much umtakababa like in KZN.
Mm.
It was Dudu or Tandra Sami, that sort of a thing. And I wanted to also just capture that couple.
And that and
That couple
that
who
precious kind of love.
that precious love among black Africans, where they would come from the outside world of oppression and hardship and
Mm.
working as domestic workers and perhaps even being ridiculed and so on. And people outside never thought that they have the intimacy, that the sensuality. But here they're so alone together
Mm.
by kipile,
Mm. Mm.
and they're saying the most intimate things to each other.
Yeah. And then Vusamazulu.
Uvusama Zulu, of course, that is.
I think just even the song itself is just so apt and appropriate at this time of what the world is going through, even us as South African. And I mean, you've got especially like the melanin one and the affirmation one is all these have to do with sort of like identity and the pride we need to have in who we are and things like that. But as we close, what do you want us to take away from this music, this album, Azania?
That there is a vision and a hope for us. In Azania, that particular name is a name that we hoped would be used after, if there was a freedom and so on. And it is land of the people in when it is translated. And the sense that I have is that many of the millennial kids don't really understand what brought us here. All is available to them at this point, including the whole fourth revolution, the digital everything, the social media and all that facility. Everything is so available,
and just
accessible.
Access to the
They have
world.
access to the globe,
Yes,
and yet they do not have access to the stories that I tell in Azania, for instance. They don't understand that kind of depth in our culture and in our social history. So I wanted to, before I exit, the world, and my hearing went and my eyesight went, I wanted to be able to leave it for them to say, this is what I witnessed growing up, and this is what the sort of dream and aspiration was for you guys. And please, remember in your access to the world that the access that you have today, these were the people that made it possible for you.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted. And then I also wanted spiritually. There is a song in Azania called Lalangashe. It was a way for me as a spiritualist and as a healer to honestly speak to these souls, including Bigo, including the old man, to say to these souls that your work is done. Your work is really done, and rest in peace.
Yeah.
Rest in peace, put the arms down. We are taking the baton on. We are not giving up. We are going to reach a place where there is a balance and there is that rainbow nation, if that what needs to be.
Do you believe or think that a lot of these people who sacrifice their lives for us to be where we are today, that a lot of them are still unsettled?
Very much so. I mean, the government.
That's the reason why
we are unsettled. Absolutely, yeah. There was an attempt recently to bring all of the exiled members who might have passed in foreign countries like Zambia, England, and so on. I was not part of it, but I was present for that event where sangomas and traditional healers went overseas and they brought these souls back to the country, and then they were placed at Freedom Park. But I particularly feel, for instance, that the manner in which Bigo was tortured and his life was taken, was particularly brutal. As a traditionalist, that part of it is so much trauma that has not been cleansed of his soul, and that some of these souls you can speak and say, rest in peace, but they need, according to our Isintu culture, they need specific traditions and rituals to rest them of the batons and the things they were hit with, and to lay those things off of them so they can really ascend to a better place and be with their ancestors. The same thing with Vusama Zulu, with the Sanusi Credo Mutua. There was a time where they torched his entire community center in Soweto, burned his sacred iskojo, where he had his amazing sculptures and artwork and all of this, and they scorched the place. They shocked the family. To this day, the daughter has dreams of gunshots going off and so on. And then they blamed him. They said that he had partnered with the apartheid government and he was a sellout. That's why they were torching his place and so on. Nobody has at any point done anything to actually then ritually cleanse this violence and this fire from our community, whether they are government or from elsewhere. So some of them,
or even the June 16th kids.
Wow.
All,
you got
all
it.
that.
Yes. And, there have been attempts from my side. I think it was 3 years ago, that I did a June 16 event out of my own pocket. And it was really just to bring people to the awareness that June 16 is just not an opportunity to go and get pissed and to have a party. That there are these souls of these children who were ashed and burned and bombed and beaten, and who these mortuaries where they ended up in the 76 in the hospital, like Baragwanath being one of them. Some of them, I had opportunity to meet some of the victims of the families, and the way that they were shot, like you would see only a hole here, and the back would be
blast out. We have to wrap it there, and clearly the stories and the wisdom and the sense of clarity and understanding that you can bring to these, especially from a spiritual perspective, I think is very important and very significant. But we have to end it here, and I must thank you very much.
Thank
you for taking the time and joining us. We might have a part 2 of this. I think.
Thank you.
I think it's deserved. But Koko Nene.
Togoza Makosi, and thank you so much. You're a beautiful soul, and I don't know how lucky I am, but I know that I was not brought here by accident, and I appreciate how you have treated us. Thank you.
Come for the jazz and stay for the good times.
On Jazz and Beyond with Nothemba Madumo.
On 702 and Cape Talk.